What if the digital asset you have been accumulating quietly for years crossed price thresholds capable of turning meaningful holdings into truly life-changing or even generational wealth? That possibility forms the core of any serious examination of XRP and the strategic transitions required as it moves through successive valuation milestones. In this discussion, we explore the practical realities, mindset adjustments, and protective steps that become relevant at three pivotal levels: $100, $1,000, and $10,000 per XRP. These are not abstract targets. They represent genuine inflection points where both the mathematics of wealth and the questions around preservation, liquidity, and legacy change in fundamental ways. It is important to state clearly at the outset that everything shared here serves educational and informational purposes only. Nothing constitutes personalized financial, legal, or tax advice. Market conditions evolve quickly, individual circumstances vary widely, and professional guidance tailored to specific situations remains essential before any action is taken. With that foundation established, attention can turn fully to the substance. Many people engaging with this material already maintain significant XRP positions, frequently 10,000 tokens or more. At present, that scale of allocation places holders among the top 4% of wallets on the network, a base that now exceeds 7 million active addresses. The very first agentic payments have already been processed on the ledger, signaling that automated systems and intelligent agents are beginning to interact directly with the protocol. This development points toward accelerated wallet growth and a future in which distinguishing purely human-controlled accounts from those managed by autonomous entities will grow more complex, even as ultimate beneficiaries stay identifiable. Three price milestones provide useful structure for thinking through the journey ahead. At each stage, the financial picture and the required decisions shift. Current levels sit slightly above $1, below the prior cycle high near $3.60. XRP has operated continuously since 2012, establishing more than 14 years of history. Observers often reference Bitcoin's long-term performance, noting that consistent exposure over a decade and a half frequently mattered more than exact entry timing for early participants. Similar dynamics may apply here, though the timeline could extend further depending on regulatory clarity, institutional integrations, and expanding real-world utility. At today's valuations, the prevailing mindset for most remains one of wealth accumulation rather than active preservation or strategic deployment. Many balance XRP alongside equities, real estate, or operating businesses. The allocation often reflects high conviction in technological adoption and cross-border settlement potential, yet it still forms part of a broader effort to build substantial net worth over time. The first major threshold arrives when XRP reaches $100. For a holder of 10,000 XRP, that valuation creates $1 million, 25,000 tokens equal $2.5 million, 50,000 XRP reaches $5 million. These figures represent genuinely life-changing capital for the vast majority of people. A conservative 5% annual return on $5 million generates $250,000 in income, an amount that exceeds salaries for many professionals and could support comfortable retirement depending on location and spending requirements. Even at this stage, the guidance from experienced observers emphasizes measured rather than aggressive lifestyle expansion. Paying off high-interest debt or fulfilling previously planned obligations makes excellent sense, yet substantially increasing ongoing expenses without first securing reliable cash flow risks repeated liquidations that gradually erode the core position. The recommended approach involves establishing a clear exit plan well in advance. Define specific price bands at which portions of the holding will be sold, calculate anticipated tax consequences ahead of time, and determine how proceeds will be redeployed into diversified income-producing assets. Recovering the original cost basis first allows subsequent gains to be treated as house money that can remain exposed to further upside if the long-term view stays intact. Accessing liquidity without forced selling also gains relevance through structured borrowing arrangements backed by XRP. Emerging protocols and institutional platforms are developing solutions that permit holders to unlock value while retaining ownership of the underlying asset. These structures require careful evaluation of counterparty risk, collateral terms, and any assurance mechanisms designed to protect participants. Many view this route as preferable to outright sales when conviction in continued appreciation remains strong. estate planning tools become more urgent once holdings reach these sizes. Forming a limited liability company in a jurisdiction offering strong charging order protection and anonymity provides a corporate veil that shields personal assets from certain creditors when proper documentation, annual minutes, and resolutions are maintained. Pairing the entity with a revocable living trust facilitates transfer of assets outside of probate, reducing both time and expense for heirs. Operating agreements that specifically address digital asset management strengthen the overall structure. The cost of these foundational tools remains modest relative to the complications they help avoid. A cautionary example involved a family whose father had obtained online trust documents that appeared complete and were properly notarized yet were never funded with actual asset titles. Upon his passing, the estate still required probate proceedings for several holdings because nothing had been retitled into the trust. The resulting administrative burden and family discussions could have been largely avoided with more complete execution. This experience illustrates why proactive structuring, even at current valuations, can spare loved ones significant friction later when asset values are considerably higher. Beyond basic entity formation, thoughts about diversification and professional support naturally arise around the $100 level. While conviction in XRP's continued appreciation may remain strong, spreading exposure across additional asset classes or strategies can provide valuable ballast. Engaging professionals who understand both conventional markets and digital assets allows for more sophisticated modeling of scenarios and withdrawal strategies. Insurance-based solutions, long utilized by enduring family wealth structures, also merit examination as mechanisms for tax-efficient transfer and liquidity management. These insurance solutions often form part of a broader professional team that includes tax attorneys and wealth managers capable of integrating digital assets into comprehensive plans. Locating advisors who already possess hands-on experience with cryptocurrency holdings can require some effort, yet it yields meaningful benefits when structures must adapt to new regulations or valuation methods. Many turn to established networks or peer recommendations to identify professionals who have previously worked with assets that experienced rapid appreciation, ensuring the guidance accounts for the unique characteristics of digital holdings rather than treating them as conventional securities. Yet even these foundational steps mark only the early phase of the journey. As the asset appreciates and crosses into substantially higher valuations, the central questions shift from how to build wealth to how best to protect, steward, and deploy it across generations. The next major threshold arrives when XRP reaches $1,000 per token. At that valuation, 10,000 XRP equals $10 million. 25,000 tokens translate to $25 million. 50,000 XRP reaches $50 million. These figures place holders in the realm of substantial wealth, sufficient to support retirement and generate several $100,000 annually through conservative allocations almost anywhere in the country. Around this scale, the lifetime gift tax exemption becomes a practical consideration. In the United States, the current threshold sits near $30 million between spouses. Individuals holding 25,000 XRP or more at $1,000 per token may already meet or exceed this limit, requiring proactive steps to manage transfers without unnecessary tax consequences. One effective approach involves securing a formal valuation of the limited liability company that holds the XRP. A qualified appraisal can sometimes support a 25 to 35% discount on the stated value for gifting purposes under applicable tax rules. With that discounted valuation in hand, larger portions of equity can move into an irrevocable trust while remaining within available exemptions. The mindset transformation at this stage proves profound. The primary objective moves beyond simply becoming wealthy. Attention turns toward preservation, responsible stewardship, and ensuring the capital serves a defined purpose that extends beyond the current generation. Establishing a family constitution or charter within the trust framework helps articulate core values, mission, and governance principles. This document clarifies how distributions will occur, who holds decision-making authority at different life stages, under what conditions principal may be accessed, and how the trust protector and distribution trustee can adapt provisions over time and across generations. Working through these details deliberately on the front end prevents the frequent mistake of funding expensive structures that later fail to produce the intended results, because underlying goals were never clearly defined. A widely referenced cautionary example involves an individual who built billionaire-level wealth through early participation in Ethereum. After a period of incarceration, he regained control of a cold wallet containing more than $1 billion. Rather than transitioning toward preservation and measured risk, he pursued aggressive leverage, staking assets, borrowing against positions, and rolling proceeds into high-risk opportunities that ultimately created significant exposure. The outcome illustrates a recurring principle. Once meaningful wealth has been created through a single vehicle, additional high-risk swings often become unnecessary and potentially destructive. While strong conviction may persist regarding XRP's potential to function as a Tier 1 asset with distinctive properties, prudent perspectives still emphasize thoughtful diversification to reduce concentration risk as holdings grow. Sophisticated strategies such as options overlays can generate supplementary cash flow while addressing downside exposure. Holders of sizable positions sometimes implement collar structures by selling calls to collect premiums and purchasing puts for protection. These arrangements produce income in flat or moderately rising markets and can facilitate acquiring additional assets at lower prices during declines. Execution of such tactics requires qualified purchaser status and works best under the guidance of advisors experienced in both traditional and digital asset derivatives. As net worth enters the tens of millions, questions around coordinated family office infrastructure naturally surface. Multifamily office arrangements often become relevant in the $20 to $50 million range, providing centralized bill payment, concierge services, travel coordination, and consolidated reporting. Single-family offices generally require $100 million or more to justify dedicated overhead, yet the essential elements of governance and continuity can begin earlier through the family constitution process already described. Insurance vehicles gain additional prominence at this level, having served prominent families for generations as tools for tax-efficient wealth transfer and flexible liquidity access. Concepts such as infinite banking, in which policy loans supply tax-advantaged capital without forcing asset sales, merit careful study for those seeking adaptable liquidity solutions that align with long-term appreciation expectations. These elements prepare the foundation for even higher valuations ahead. When XRP potentially reaches $10,000, the scale of wealth for early holders becomes extraordinary, shifting emphasis once again toward legacy impact and multi-generational structures capable of operating with strategic intent across changing regulatory and technological landscapes. At this ultimate scale, the conversation naturally turns toward what enduring legacy the capital can create and how structures can remain adaptable amid uncertainty. When XRP reaches $10,000 per token, the mathematics become extraordinary for those who maintained meaningful positions. 10,000 XRP would equal $100 million. 25,000 tokens would reach 250 million, 50,000 XRP would equal 500 million. At these levels, holders move beyond simple preservation into active consideration of how the wealth can build institutions, support causes, and operate with purpose long after the current generation. Family office infrastructure often becomes central here, whether through a dedicated single-family office or continued evolution of earlier governance frameworks. The emphasis rests on strategic capital placement and relationship-driven opportunities. Many choose to establish private foundations or donor-advised funds to direct resources toward specific problems they have encountered personally, such as particular diseases or community challenges they wish to address directly. Others invest in early-stage companies, developing progressive technologies expected to reshape industries and improve lives. The key lies in defining a clear investment mandate or thematic focus broad enough to accommodate shifts in technology, regulation, or global conditions. Rigid mandates can constrain action when environments change, whereas flexible frameworks with a capable trust protector allow adaptation across generations without losing sight of core intentions. The trust protector role itself rotates over time, ensuring continuity while permitting adjustments in accordance with guidelines established at the outset. Complex estate planning tools also gain relevance at this magnitude. Offshore structures in jurisdictions such as the Cook Islands, Nevis, or the Isle of Man provide additional layers of protection against potential future claims, wealth taxes, or regulatory changes that remain difficult to predict. Trigger provisions within irrevocable trusts can automatically move assets to these offshore vehicles upon defined events, offering a pre-planned response to uncertainty. These arrangements involve ongoing administrative costs and professional maintenance, making them most appropriate once net worth approaches or exceeds $100 million. Until that scale, the expense often outweighs the incremental benefit for most holders. Gifting to family members requires similar forethought once wealth reaches these proportions. Annual exclusion limits currently allow transfers of approximately $18,000 to $19,000 per recipient without immediate tax filing requirements. When larger amounts of digital assets move, proper documentation, transaction records, and confirmation that the recipient controls the receiving wallet or cold storage become essential to avoid future disputes or tax complications. Working with an estate planner experienced in gift tax rules ensures compliance and provides peace of mind that transfers align with overall legacy objectives. Private security measures and digital footprint reduction also enter consideration at this stage. Services exist to remove personal information from public databases and to provide protective teams familiar with high net worth situations. Proactive preparation in this area follows the same logic applied to other risk management steps. It is preferable to have resources in place before they are needed rather than reacting after an issue arises. Practical questions around generating returns after significant appreciation also surface naturally once holdings reach these levels. Liquidity pools and borrow-lend protocols on the ledger are expected to expand, allowing participation from both individuals and institutions with appropriate safeguards, such as arbiters for disputes between counterparties. Several crypto-friendly prime brokers already offer solutions that reflect XRP holdings on balance sheets to support low-risk activities capable of generating cash flow. Some structures mirror positions off-exchange to draw margin while keeping the original asset intact. In all cases, understanding counterparty risk, insurance coverage, and whether assets remain in custody or move on-chain remains critical. No yield opportunity exists without some form of risk, and thorough evaluation with professional input helps align choices with individual tolerance and objectives. Accounting systems for entities holding these assets deserve attention as well. Standard frameworks apply, yet specialized platforms capable of handling cryptocurrency transactions beyond simple decimal precision prove valuable for accurate record-keeping and tax preparation. Tools that integrate with advisors experienced in digital asset accounting can adjust for activities such as yield generation or other on-chain interactions that may arise. International holders face additional considerations depending on their jurisdiction and account type. Certain retirement wrappers carry restrictions on leverage, though algorithmic trading strategies inside qualified accounts have shown consistent performance in some implementations. Advisors familiar with cross-border rules can help structure participation appropriately, whether the individual remains in their current country or contemplates relocation after appreciation. Agentic payments represent another evolving area that may influence how wealth is managed at scale. Standards now exist for creating digital identities tied to autonomous agents on the ledger, permitting those agents to initiate payments and act independently within defined parameters. The first such payment has already been processed, pointing toward broader adoption of systems where intelligent entities interact directly with financial infrastructure. Questions about liquidity and visibility in traditional financial channels also arise. Institutions focus where sufficient liquidity exists to support large allocations without violating diversification requirements or minimum check size thresholds, often $5 to $10 million or more. Until funds reach meaningful scale, typically $100 million or higher, certain large players face structural barriers to participation. Once liquidity deepens, engagement from these channels tends to increase rapidly. Examples from holders illustrate sound approaches at different stages. One individual with approximately 14,000 XRP and no children expressed a clear plan to pay off all debts at the $100 level while retaining the remainder without selling further, continuing to work for several years even after that milestone. Prioritizing high-interest obligations in this manner aligns well with preserving long-term principle while improving immediate financial flexibility. These considerations demonstrate how the highest valuation threshold transforms not only personal finances, but the entire framework for decision-making, risk management, and legacy building across multiple dimensions. Among the most common practical questions that arise once these structures are in place concerns how to generate ongoing returns from the appreciated holdings without unnecessary sales that could trigger taxes or reduce future upside. Multiple pathways are expected to become available in the coming months, particularly as new ledger standards enable liquidity pools and borrow-lend functionality. Institutions are anticipated to participate directly in these environments, with a broker and an arbiter positioned to facilitate smooth transactions and resolve any disputes between counterparties. These developments should expand options beyond what exists today while maintaining appropriate safeguards. It remains essential to recognize that no method of generating returns exists without some form of risk. United States Treasuries have historically represented one of the lowest risk instruments available, given the limited number of defaults over the nation's history. Similar low-risk opportunities may emerge through repo-style arrangements where XRP holdings can be reflected on institutional balance sheets to support other activities that produce cash flow. Several established prime brokers with crypto capabilities already offer such solutions, and additional providers are likely to enter as regulatory clarity improves and the asset gains broader institutional acceptance. Some approaches mirror XRP positions off-exchange on separate platforms, allowing margin to be drawn against the reflected balance while the original holding stays intact. This method has been structured successfully in certain hedge fund vehicles and produces returns through strategic deployment of the resulting liquidity. On-chain decentralized protocols have begun offering comparable functionality, though they operate under different custody and risk parameters. In either case, participants benefit from understanding exactly how assets are held, what insurance or assurance protections apply, who serves as counterparty, and what recourse exists if issues arise. Thorough due diligence, ideally with input from licensed professionals, helps match specific solutions to individual risk tolerance and overall portfolio objectives. Accounting considerations for entities that hold these positions also require attention once yield generation becomes active. Generally accepted accounting principles provide the baseline framework, yet specialized software platforms designed for cryptocurrency transactions prove far more effective than basic tools when handling activities beyond simple transfers. These systems accommodate the precision needed for on-chain interactions and integrate with tax preparation processes. When complex yield farming, lending, or similar activities occur, advisors experienced in digital asset accounting can make the necessary adjustments to ensure accurate reporting and compliance. International participants face additional layers depending on their country of residence and the type of account or entity involved. Certain retirement wrappers impose restrictions on leverage or specific strategies, although algorithmic trading approaches inside qualified accounts have demonstrated consistent performance in recent periods. Advisors familiar with cross-border rules can assist in structuring participation appropriately, whether the individual intends to remain in their current jurisdiction or contemplates future relocation. Many jurisdictions already have professionals equipped to handle digital asset matters, and networks exist to connect holders with suitable experts for tax, accounting, and entity structuring needs beyond what a single provider may offer directly. Agentic systems add another dimension to future wallet and payment dynamics. Standards now support the creation of digital identities for autonomous agents on the ledger, allowing those agents to initiate payments and execute actions within defined parameters. The first such payment has already occurred, and broader rollout is expected to increase both transaction volume and the diversity of wallet types, including those controlled by intelligent systems rather than individuals. This evolution reinforces the importance of clear beneficiary designation and robust governance within any structures established today. Questions around debt payoff versus continued holding also surface frequently. One holder with roughly 14,000 XRP outlined a plan to clear all debts at the $100 level while retaining the remainder indefinitely and continuing employment for several additional years. This approach aligns well with sound financial principles, particularly when high-interest obligations such as credit cards are involved. Paying off such debt eliminates rates that would be difficult to match through market returns, and improves immediate cash flow and peace of mind without forcing liquidation of the core position. For those considering loans against appreciated holdings, established strategies such as infinite banking concepts provide frameworks for accessing liquidity in a tax-advantaged manner. When structured through appropriate vehicles, policy loans or similar arrangements can supply capital without triggering taxable events. Interest obligations can be serviced through returns generated on other portions of the portfolio, and the interest itself may be deductible depending on how the borrowed funds are deployed. Loans can often be rolled or increased as the underlying asset appreciates, provided the debt service remains current. The key lies in borrowing only a prudent percentage of the total position, typically 20 to 50% for many holders, and ensuring the remaining allocation continues to work toward covering costs and supporting long-term growth. Wyoming continues to stand out as a preferred jurisdiction for limited liability companies holding digital assets because it combines strong charging order protection, anonymity through sponsored agent filings, zero state income tax, and the most progressive regulatory environment for cryptocurrency in the United States. These features make it attractive for both domestic and international holders seeking creditor protection and operational simplicity. Entities formed in Wyoming can be maintained with relatively low annual costs, and registered agent services allow owners to keep personal addresses off public records while still complying with legal requirements. Transfers of existing trusts or limited liability companies to new providers remain possible at any time. Professional teams can handle the necessary documentation and updates to operating agreements or trust instruments, ensuring continuity of protection and governance. When moving from one service provider to another, holders often gain access to more integrated digital asset expertise and a broader network of specialists for ongoing needs. These practical mechanisms illustrate how the highest valuation thresholds can be navigated with both protection and productivity in mind. Structures established earlier create the foundation, while yield strategies, accounting systems, cross-border planning, and liquidity tools allow the wealth to work effectively without compromising the core principles of stewardship and legacy. Building on these operational tools, the broader strategic picture at the highest thresholds emphasizes creating structures that can endure and adapt while pursuing meaningful impact. At the $10,000 level, many holders begin to focus on building institutions or initiatives designed to outlast them. This may occur through a single-family office that coordinates investments with long-term intent, through private foundations that allocate capital according to specific causes, or through direct participation in early-stage companies developing technologies expected to address significant global challenges. The emphasis shifts from preservation alone towards strategic deployment of relationship capital and resources in ways that generate both financial returns and tangible progress on issues the holder cares deeply about. A clear investment mandate or set of themes helps guide these decisions while preserving flexibility. No one can predict every future development, whether artificial intelligence transforms entire sectors, regulatory frameworks evolve in unexpected directions, or political systems move between democratic, republican, or technocratic models. Mandates that are too narrow can leave capital sidelined when conditions change. Broader frameworks, paired with a trust protector empowered to make adjustments within established guidelines, allow the structure to remain dynamic across generations. The protector role itself rotates over time, ensuring fresh perspective while honoring the original intent documented in the family constitution or charter. Offshore diversification also receives consideration at this scale. Many family offices spread holdings across multiple jurisdictions, currencies, and markets to reduce exposure to any single regulatory environment. Structures in places such as the British Virgin Islands or other established offshore centers can complement domestic entities. Trigger provisions already referenced can activate automatic transfers to these vehicles upon defined events, such as the imposition of certain wealth taxes or other governmental actions that might otherwise affect domestic holdings. These arrangements require ongoing professional oversight and administrative support, and the associated costs generally make them practical only once net worth reaches approximately $100 million or higher. Below that threshold, the maintenance expense often exceeds the incremental protection for most situations. Private security and anonymity measures gain additional relevance once wealth reaches these proportions. Services that systematically remove personal information from public records and provide dedicated protective resources become worthwhile investments for those who prefer to keep their affairs out of the spotlight. The principle remains consistent with other planning steps. Having these capabilities available before any need arises offers greater peace of mind than attempting to assemble them reactively. Practical questions around yield products with differing characteristics also arise once appreciation has occurred. Multiple options are anticipated, some with varying lockup periods, return profiles, and risk parameters. Liquidity pools and institutional platforms may offer shorter-term access with correspondingly different yields, while other arrangements could involve longer commitments in exchange for potentially higher returns. Understanding these trade-offs, including how assets are custodied and what protections apply, allows holders to allocate portions of their position across different vehicles according to liquidity needs and overall risk tolerance. No single product suits every situation, and professional modeling helps align choices with individual objectives and cash flow requirements. International considerations extend beyond basic account setup. Holders in jurisdictions such as Canada or Australia can access appropriate structures and advisory support, including for self-managed superannuation funds where digital assets are permitted. Limitations exist within certain retirement wrappers regarding leverage or specific strategies, yet algorithmic approaches inside qualified accounts have produced consistent results in observed periods. Networks of local professionals exist to handle tax, accounting, and entity matters that fall outside any single provider's direct offerings. Connecting with these specialists ensures comprehensive coverage regardless of where the holder resides or ultimately chooses to base operations. These elements collectively illustrate how the three primary phases of the wealth journey interconnect. In the initial stage, the focus rests on building wealth through continued accumulation and positioning ahead of catalysts. At the intermediate thresholds, the emphasis transitions to preservation, prudent diversification, and the establishment of protective structures that safeguard gains. At the highest levels, attention turns toward using the capital for impact, legacy, and institutions capable of operating with strategic intent across changing conditions. Each phase builds on the previous one, and decisions made early create options that become valuable later. Throughout all stages, the principle that one only needs to get rich once serves as a useful guidepost. Once substantial wealth has been created through a vehicle with strong long-term characteristics, additional high-risk swings often become unnecessary. Diversification, professional guidance, and thoughtful structures provide ballast while still allowing participation in opportunities aligned with core convictions. The same disciplined approach that supported accumulation continues to serve preservation and impact objectives when adapted to the new scale. These considerations prepare the ground for final reflections on how individuals can navigate the coming transitions with clarity and intention. With the operational and structural foundations now in view, the overarching narrative across all three valuation thresholds becomes clearer. The journey begins in the accumulation phase, where the primary objective remains building meaningful wealth through consistent positioning and conviction in the asset's long-term potential. At current levels near $1, holders focus on adding to positions over time, recognizing that exact entry points matter less than sustained exposure across market cycles. This stage rewards patience and continued education, as the network expands with new capabilities such as agentic payments and broader institutional integrations. The first major shift occurs around $100 per token. Here, the mathematics transform modest allocations into life-changing sums, yet the recommended mindset still prioritizes preservation over rapid lifestyle expansion. Clear exit strategies, basic entity structures such as Wyoming limited liability companies paired with revocable living trusts, and early engagement with experienced professionals help protect gains and avoid probate complications for heirs. Borrowing against holdings emerges as a tax-efficient liquidity tool, while diversification thinking begins to balance continued conviction with prudent risk management. The cautionary principle that one only needs to get rich once starts to apply, encouraging measured rather than aggressive additional risk-taking. At $1,000, the scale reaches $10 million to $50 million for typical allocation sizes discussed. The lifetime gift tax threshold comes into play, prompting advanced planning through discounted valuations of holding entities and transfers into irrevocable trusts. The mindset moves decisively from becoming wealthy to preserving and stewarding that wealth responsibly. Family constitutions and governance documents articulate values, distribution rules, and decision-making authority, preventing costly structures from failing to deliver intended outcomes. Sophisticated tools such as options overlays and insurance-based strategies provide cash flow and tax-efficient transfer mechanisms. Multifamily office services become relevant in the 20 to 50 million range, offering coordinated support, while single-family office infrastructure typically requires higher thresholds. The Ethereum example of continued high-risk leverage after substantial wealth creation serves as a reminder that preservation often demands different habits than accumulation. The highest threshold at $10,000 elevates the focus to legacy and impact. Holdings reach $100 million or more for the allocation sizes referenced, enabling the creation of institutions designed to outlast the current generation. Private foundations, donor-advised funds, and direct investments in progressive technologies allow capital to address specific challenges while generating both financial and societal returns. Broad investment mandates with flexible governance through rotating trust protectors accommodate unforeseen changes in technology, regulation, or political systems. Offshore diversification and trigger provisions add layers of protection against unpredictable future events, though these become practical primarily above $100 million due to ongoing administrative costs. Throughout every stage, education remains a constant thread. Webinars, independent research, and conversations with qualified professionals help holders anticipate the questions that will arise at each milestone. Self-managed approaches work for some, yet most benefit from assembling a team that includes certified public accountants, estate attorneys familiar with digital assets, wealth managers, and insurance specialists. These professionals provide nuance that general resources cannot replicate, particularly when modeling tax implications, withdrawal strategies, or cross-border considerations. Practical mechanisms for generating returns after appreciation continue to evolve. Liquidity pools, borrow-lend protocols, and institutional platforms are expected to offer varied options with different risk, return, and liquidity profiles. Some may involve lockup periods in exchange for potentially higher yields, while others prioritize ready access. No approach eliminates risk entirely, and understanding counterparty exposure, custody arrangements, and insurance coverage remains essential. Algorithmic strategies inside certain qualified accounts have shown consistent performance, while mirroring techniques in hedge fund structures provide additional pathways. International holders can access comparable solutions, though account type restrictions and local regulations require tailored structuring with advisors who understand both digital assets and cross-border rules. The three phases ultimately interconnect into a single, coherent progression. Accumulation creates the base, preservation protects and organizes it. Impact and legacy put it to work in ways that reflect personal values and extend influence across generations. Decisions made during the first phase directly influence the options available later, which is why proactive structuring, even at current valuations, can spare families significant friction and expense when asset values are substantially higher. These reflections underscore that the transitions ahead are not merely financial, but personal and generational. Those who approach each threshold with clarity, professional support, and a defined sense of purpose position themselves to navigate the changes with greater confidence and effectiveness. As these reflections draw to a close, the complete arc of the journey through the three valuation thresholds stands in sharper relief. What begins as a focused effort to build wealth through patient accumulation evolves, at $100 per XRP, into a phase of deliberate preservation and foundational structuring. Basic entities, trusts, clear exit strategies, and early professional relationships create the platform that protects gains and provides options for liquidity without forced sales. The mathematics at this stage already deliver life-changing sums for holders of 10,000, 25,000, or 50,000 tokens, yet the prevailing guidance remains one of measured progress rather than immediate lifestyle transformation. The transition to $1,000 marks a deeper mindset shift. Wealth moves from something still being built to something that must be actively stewarded. Gift tax considerations, discounted valuations for irrevocable trusts, family constitutions that articulate values and governance, and sophisticated tools such as options overlays and insurance strategies all serve the goal of preserving and organizing capital across generations. The cautionary example of continued high-risk leverage after substantial wealth creation reinforces the principle that getting rich once is often sufficient when paired with thoughtful diversification and risk management. Multifamily office capabilities become relevant, while the seeds of single-family office infrastructure can be planted through governance documents even before net worth reaches the higher thresholds typically required. At $10,000, the focus expands once again to legacy and impact. Holdings reach scales that enable the creation of enduring institutions, private foundations, and strategic investments in progressive technologies. Broad mandates with flexible governance through rotating trust protectors allow adaptation to unforeseen developments in artificial intelligence, regulation, or political systems. Offshore diversification and trigger provisions add resilience against unpredictable future events, though these become most practical above $100 million. Private security and digital footprint management join the suite of protective measures that become worthwhile at this magnitude. Throughout, the emphasis remains on purpose-driven deployment of capital, whether through direct investments, donor-advised funds, or initiatives that address challenges the holder has experienced personally. Across every stage, the value of education and proactive planning cannot be overstated. Discussions such as this one, independent research, and ongoing conversations with qualified professionals help anticipate the questions and decisions that will arise at each milestone. Self-managed approaches suit some individuals, yet most benefit from assembling a coordinated team that includes accountants, estate attorneys experienced with digital assets, wealth managers, and insurance specialists. These professionals provide the nuance and modeling that general resources cannot replicate, particularly when tax implications, withdrawal strategies, or cross-border considerations enter the picture. Practical mechanisms for generating returns after appreciation continue to develop. Liquidity pools, borrow-lend protocols, institutional platforms, and mirroring structures are expected to offer varied options with different risk, return, and liquidity profiles. Some may involve lockup commitments in exchange for potentially higher yields, while others prioritize ready access. No approach eliminates risk, and clear understanding of counterparty exposure, custody, and insurance remains essential. Algorithmic strategies inside certain qualified accounts and established concepts, such as infinite banking, applied to digital assets, provide additional pathways for tax-advantaged liquidity and cash flow. International holders can access comparable solutions when working with advisors who understand both digital assets and local regulations. The three phases ultimately form a single coherent progression rather than isolated stages. Accumulation creates the foundation. Preservation organizes and protects it. Impact and legacy put it to purposeful work that can extend influence across generations. Decisions made during the first phase directly shape the options available later, which is why even modest proactive steps at current valuations can prevent significant friction and expense when asset values are substantially higher. The transitions ahead are arriving more quickly than many anticipate, making preparation today a meaningful advantage. Those who approach each threshold with clarity, defined objectives, and access to experienced guidance position themselves to navigate the changes with greater confidence. The structures, mindsets, and tools discussed here are not theoretical. They represent practical responses to the opportunities and responsibilities that accompany significant appreciation in a maturing digital asset ecosystem. By defining personal plans, engaging qualified professionals, and maintaining the disciplined habits that supported accumulation, holders can move through these milestones with intention and effectiveness. The possibilities are real for those who have positioned themselves thoughtfully. The coming years will test both conviction and preparation, yet the frameworks outlined across these thresholds provide a roadmap for turning potential into enduring outcomes.